Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm really excited about today's guest, Eric Holsapple, and he's actually a mindfulness and real estate investor. He's got a lot of interesting topics and key points to discuss today, as well as his new book, How to Profit with Presence. And so we're talking about the 12 pillars of mindful leadership. It's going to be a fascinating discussion. I'm always interested in people that have doing different things. So, Eric, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we connected through Podmatch, and looks like tell us the audience your story and living in the gap, and we'll get right into it.
Sure. Well, I came out with an MBA in finance in the mid 1980s and went to work in real estate and was immediately successful. In a couple of years, I was the manager and then CEO of an Australian division, ran North American division for an Australian group, and really was a walking boarding pass. Moved to LA and managed office in Denver, New Jersey, traveled all over Western Canada, reported to the UK and Australia. In all the outside metrics, I was hugely successful, the six-figure salary, the Mercedes, the apartment on the bay, all that stuff. But inside, I was dying. I worked all the time. Personal life suffered. I was overweight. I drank too much. I'm an athlete. I wasn't exercising. I looked in the mirror one day. I remember stepping on the scale. I hadn't been able to be on a scale for a while. I stepped on the scale. I looked in the mirror one day and said, geez, you got to make some changes. You're not going to be around very long. And I did. I started on giving up drinking for a bit and exercising again. I left that job. I decided to go back to get a PhD in economics and find a little more meaning in my life. I met my wife and I found yoga. And yoga was my first entry into mindfulness. It was like I'd become disembodied from, just in my own body. So I refound my body and mindfulness. A little bit after that, my older brother, who's a poet, my dad was a football coach, and they were estranged.
Oh.
He had started meditating. And I just watched him come back to the family. They'd been estranged and away for a while. And then he got closer to my dad, and my dad didn't change. He was in his 70s, man. He didn't change. My brother came back and opened up, and he and my dad got back together, and I just got my family back, seemed like. And my brother said, you want to try it? So I started. And I had immediate results with it. And meditation may not be for everybody, but I had immediate results with it. For years, I was a closet meditator. I didn't come out. I just did it on my own. I didn't tell people, it wasn't back then. Yoga and meditation is a lot weirder than it is today. Now it's a hot topic on a lot of things, and the science has evolved to show why. But back then, it was like you just didn't hear about it much in the US. So, but later on in my business, just kind of one by one, different people asked me what was going on with me and noticed a difference in me and those kind of things. And we called it in our culture at LC Real Estate Group. Started having a seed group meeting. First, there was, just myself and one other. And 6 months later, the room was full of different people. And today we start all of our meetings with a little centering meditation. We used to just call it centering because meditation was a little too weird for people. But it's made a huge difference in our group. And then I launched a nonprofit 5 years ago, so-called Living in the Gap, where we train other professionals in how to be successful and continue to make money, even make more money, but to be less stressed, happier, make a bigger difference for yourselves. How do you put your family first, even when you're in a busy work environment? And it's been really, really gratifying. So in this last year, I published a book called Profit with Presence, the 12 Pillars of Mindful Leadership, to try to share it with the larger audience in the business community.
Yeah. What's so interesting is I'm talking to more entrepreneurs these days, and the number two thing, number one is where they were always figuring well to kind of do their own thing and be in control. But the number two is always this idea of mindfulness. And the more I talk to it, it's like more like yoga and transcendental meditation, these types of things, like getting into your body, listening to it. It's so key and so important. So yeah, well, like basically, like, what I love is, this idea where, everything on the outside, but then inside you're dying. Yeah, I'm sure most people can resonate with that. And
Yeah, a lot can.
yeah, and so we'll talk about this idea of mindfulness and using mindfulness, improving workplace culture. What are some tidbits or gems that you can
Yeah.
give?
The first thing that I would say is, it has to start with yourself. It's a lot of times people in business or management go, "Oh yes, these people, they should be doing this." But I find that it's a personal journey. It's not something to force on. It's an individual choice and not something to force on other people. But the amazing thing is, like my brother Bruce, when he changed, the world changed. One person changed and it changes the world. So everybody doesn't have to do it. You doing it can make a huge difference. Now, whether like in my case, a lot of people saw I was a pretty hard driving son of a gun, and I still am. I still have a lot of those attributes. I mean, I don't mess around in business, but a lot of people saw change in me and said, "What are you doing?" So that may happen for you, and there may be a time when you say to share it, but mostly it's a self journey. And the other thing is that it takes a lot less to get started, and it's a lot shorter. Like we suggest people start with 2 minutes of meditation. A lot of times people start with too much, and our minds are so busy that we go in there and we try to go for 15 or 20 minutes, like transcendental meditations, 20 minutes 2 times a day. And that's a great place to get to. I've been meditating 30 years or so, and I do 20-minute meditation. That's my standard. Some days a little less. Sometimes I get to do a little more, but that's my standard. And there's so many other ways to practice, like a mindful walk. And the big thing of that is leave your phone behind. Start with 5 minutes, just walk around the building. Feel that separation anxiety that you have. Oh my God, I might miss a text. Oh my, something might happen. We don't have to be as immediately available as we've been conditioned, and that gives just those walks. You can go and just start looking at the trees and things. And then on the weekend, maybe take a little longer mindful walk. Same with when you're eating, just try to stop doing it, reading the paper and having, on your phone and those kind of things, and just start being a little more intentional and mindful. Can really change. The big thing is people think that mindfulness is woo-woo. So many business people. I say, the world is distracted, divided, unable to make progress in some key areas that are so important. That to me is woo-woo. Mindfulness, if I boil it down to one word, is focus. Ability to focus on what I choose to focus on to the exclusion of all else for that period of time. We can multitask. We just can't pay attention to everything. I mean, our bodies are phenomenal. We can do things we don't even, know we're doing them. We're habitual creatures. We just do the next thing. But so what we train people to do, and what I train myself to do, is when I'm at work, focus on work. And when I go home, leave work behind, I focus on, my family. And that starts with go home, put my phone in the holster for a little bit of time, and try to be there. And if I can focus, I get so much more done. And I can move the world in a few hours a day if I'm paying attention. But if I'm constantly distracted, not listening to people, I'm not productive. It takes longer, and I get home and I'm depleted. I'm fine being tired, but I don't want to be depleted. So that's just the anxiety and stress that we're just so used to just taking on, and we just think that we have to have it. And it's a stressful world, man. We need to take on. I had a young man that was a good friend of my son Colton's, and we were having a discussion this summer, and he said, I think we're the first generation that has to work on paying attention and being aware that our technology is so anti it that if we don't do some things that counter it, we don't have a chance. I thought that was a great insight by a young man, to say, notice that, I have to really take my focus back, because business is great at stealing your focus. I mean, we're good. If you want to take it back, you need to, put a stake in the ground. Say, no, I'm going to take it back. I have to do some social media. I have to do my emails. I'm not saying you don't have to do some of that stuff, but it doesn't have to be 24/7.
Yeah, I love this idea where you're talking about managing energy and keeping your constant state of flow by not being distracted. And what's interesting is, technology is a tool, so we can use technology, but we don't have to be chained by our phones, and we choose to what we can focus on, which is really hard these days. But which is why I have you on the show is this idea of getting mindfulness and basically helping. It has so many benefits. One is you talk about is finding purpose in life, and you've had great success in business and finances. So kind of this kind of describe that.
Well, the first thing I think is, first of all, how did I come on that is, I taught at the university for 20 years, Colorado State University, mostly seniors, and countless ones come in their last year, and they just say, and I go, why are you here? No idea. Mom and dad said it was business or engineering and they'd pay for it. What are you going to do now? And my advice was, figure out, take a little time. It's not next step isn't mom and dad's, it's yours. And you're going to wake up and you're 50. Family, mortgage, job, you get into something, you can't get out of it for a while. So take a little time figuring out why you're here, what you want to do. And my journey with it's been my first purpose is just to gain awareness of myself, an inside journey of what makes me tick. Culture has put so much in us about what we should be doing. Most of it is buying stuff and making stuff and consuming stuff and throwing it away. And I'm not saying any of that's bad. We've certainly improved our material, development and our stature and those kind of things, but it's not a purpose. Yeah. Profit's not a purpose. Profit's a result of living a running a purpose-driven business. That's producing a good that somebody demands. Profit's not. That's just empty. So first is, and I call it finding presence, finding my inside thing, noticing myself, becoming more self-aware, and that's my first purpose. And from there, I can start to find another purpose. Like my purpose now has been to deliver mindfulness to the business community, which I think is a little deficit in it. And I think the business community, if anybody's going to get us out of the jam we're in, the business community, when they say we've had enough, we've had enough of the lobbyists and the politicians going nowhere and wasting all of our time and arguing over things that don't matter or we're never going to agree on. Why don't we compromise? I think the business community are the ones in the end. South Africa with apartheid, they were stuck way worse than we are. And when sanctions came in and the business couldn't run, they told the politicians, enough. We want to make a little money. We want to have our lives, and we'll make some compromises to do that. And they're not perfect, but they got through a pretty tough time. And I think the business community is going to play a role. So my role has been, I just have a hard time watching and doing nothing when I see so much waste, so it's what a pity.
Yeah. There's I think most entrepreneurs, can agree with you. There's a lot of inefficiency and just, the whole system needs updating, and, we're spending all our money on things that are not very productive and just kind of, basically for the corporations and the lobbyists. So you talk about this idea of precession effect. What is that?
I have found that whenever I give of myself, good things come back to me. That's just, I noticed, like I went to the university just because I knew I needed to be doing something. I burn up as a businessman because I'm tough. And I just, it was kind of our experience in my 20s that I started, reaching out and giving back. I didn't have a theory. I just knew I had to do something. At first, I didn't even know why I was there. But one of my mentors, Larry Kendall, with Ninja Selling, I taught with him for 10 years at CSU, and I was just having lunch with him one day. I said, this is what I noticed. I go in and I give myself here. I go to the Housing Authority Board or the Habitat Board, and I do these things. And I notice people just come up to me and offer me business things, even though I'm there to build some houses for people that don't have it.
Yeah,
they come up and give me opportunities. Or one time I'm at the economic development, I'm the chair of the board, and the guy Ralph Waldo comes up to me and says, hey, Eric, I love what you've done with the university and you're doing here. North Fort Collins needs a developer like you. I'm a real estate developer. And 5 years later, I'm building a King Soopers. I said, what's going on with that? He said, Buckmeister Fuller in the 1930s came up with a precession effect. He said, just like honeybees go in, they go in to get honey, to get things to make honey. And the side effect is they pollinate the flowers in the world. The sun pulls the earth to it. the gravitational pull, but the earth doesn't crash in, it goes at a 90-degree angle. The world works at 90-degree angles. And so often we're just trying to take the direct cold calling approach. I advise people, hey, if you're trying to get into business in a community, go join a nonprofit board and try to do well. You'll meet other leaders, and what happens is when they get to know you and see who you really are, and something comes up, it's just a conversation where they say, Chris, do you know about this? Oh, and before you know it, business comes out of it. When you start paying attention to it, the procession effect is everywhere. Just means that it's an indirect effect of giving of yourself. It's gratitude in action. It's your karma. When you go in and give of yourself, I mean, you have to watch. I mean, some people hear that and they go in and they're trying to manipulate and, work their way in and have somebody think they're being good. Just go in and legitimately give of yourself. It's a hell of a lot better than cold calling. And just see what happens. My life has just been so enriched by it. Like, for instance, I went in teaching at CSU. I got 5 Colorado State partners in this business that I run. It's incredible. And it wasn't why I went and taught. It just happened because I was in the right place, and they'd say, what I want. I'd say, well, try this. Yeah. The procession effect is really about gratitude and service, and that it's not just altruistic. It's also part of a sound business strategy. Yeah. That business and service, also is, particularly in real estate and most businesses, you're as good as your community is. Some people have international community or national, or, real estate's a little more localized. But the better my community is, the better my investments are. So what better way than to, invest in my community?
Interesting.
It's amazing. And it also makes you feel better,
Yeah.
Makes you feel better. It's the expression of gratitude in action. And it makes a real difference. It comes back. I've seen it again and again and again.
Yeah. That's the second time I've heard somebody reference Buckminster Fullering. The one was
incredible.
The accelerating returns, accelerating accelerations. That's what it was.
I don't know that one specifically, but he was amazing. There's a lot of amazing business people out there.
Yeah.
He was an architect by trade.
Yeah. So, as we're coming to the kind of the closes, especially with COVID and now remote work is the norm now. So how can mindfulness help companies navigate remote work and how can, business lead us out of divisiveness?
Presence, starting to get more in touch with yourself is, it's virtual. It's something that can really help you connect with people. So remote work is different. I find that in the office, command and control can work. In remote work, it cannot work. There's another level of trust, another level of relationship. There's another level of connection. You have to make a conscious connection with people. You may have not as many reports because you have to actually reach out and meet with people somewhere if that's going to work. I don't think it works. And in transactional things, it can work. But in relational things or creative things, creating things and whatnot, remote work is very tough. But it's here to stay. So I just find mindfulness is a way that can really help that. With device, mindfulness helps us to listen and stop judging everybody. Because we're judging machines, Republican, Democrat, socialist, racist, whatever it is. We have all these labels, and then we say we know everything about the person underneath the label, and we don't listen anymore. Mindfulness is about listening, and listening is the key to relationships. And relationships is a study that just came out of Harvard, a 70-year study with 500 some participants. They found that the number one key to happiness in the long term was relationships, long-term relationships. So how do you have those relationships? You listen, you're present, you don't judge, you serve,
Yeah.
And so many people find at the end of their life, if hopefully by then, that it was relationships were the key to their life, their connection with other humans. And you can have that in business. It doesn't have to be just at home and with your friends. You can have those relationships in business, I found. Sometimes it brings it, a little stickier situation, but with mindfulness, you can navigate it. Just be real and be legitimate and be compassionate. You can say anything if you're compassionate and you're listening.
Yeah. Really fascinating. And I love how this whole episode has been on mindfulness, but, obviously we could get into your real estate and your teaching and
Yeah.
all that. How can people contact you, follow you, visit your website,
Yeah.
reach out to you, etc.?
Website is livinginthegap.org. Has any programs that we have, has a lot of free resources, books and meditations is a free 21-day practice there. You can get the book there, Profit with Presence, The 12 Pillars of Mindful Leadership. It's a Wall Street bestseller. And also it's available on Amazon. So
Awesome.
awesome.
And for all the audience out there, be sure to check out the book. I'm going to check it out as well right after this, and check out he's also on YouTube, all the social media channels. And with that, thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah.
Appreciate what you do.